Oh, yeah. Everyone's real happy then.
Do I detect a note of sarcasm?
Are you kidding me? This baby is off the charts. Heidi.
Oh, a sarcasm detector. Oh, that's a really useful invention.
Happy now?
So there's a rumor going around that we are heading to another DC Comics crisis in 2022. And here to talk with me about that is comic book writer, editor Joe Coralla. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I've done better. We're getting some pretty decent comic books lately. I'm just waiting for some news to excite me, and this isn't one of them. Now, we do know before Dan DiDio was fired, he was doing this Generation 5 thing, and apparently there was going to be some type of crisis event, kind of along with that. But once he was relieved of his duties, they decided to go in a new direction. But seemingly they've done almost everything that Dan DiDio was going to do. We got Generation 5 in the future form of Future State, and then right now the DC continuity as it is moving towards Future State. So we're kind of getting this big sweeping story about the future of DC Comics and the new, the new heroes that are going to kind of take up the mantles. And apparently we are going to head towards this crisis that was originally planned, but it's just going to take place later.
Yeah, and again, this is rumor. This is subject to change. We all heard that 5G was definitely going to happen well after it was scrapped and things like that. But it wouldn't be shocking for there to be a crisis event. The problem is DC hasn't had a crisis event where it's called Crisis in a little while, but they've had these mini sort of multiverse kind of crisis events. Like Flashpoint wasn't called a crisis event, but it was a crisis event. Death Metal wasn't a crisis event, but it was kind of a crisis event. Say Metal, Death Metal. The Infinite Frontier stuff is a multiverse crisis kind of thing, but they're not calling it a crisis. So I think that's where maybe the way they're talking about this, that's going to be a crisis event. It could end up being closer to Metal, Death Metal, and Infinite Frontier than Infinite Crisis or Final Crisis.
They might as well just got Crisis on Infinite DC Comics, reboots here at this point. I mean, like you said, as far as I'm concerned, I know they called it an anti-crisis event, but Dark Knight's Death Metal that's a crisis.
Yeah.
The entire multiverse was in jeopardy. Everybody was about to die. They were saved by Diana and the heroes, and everything changed as a result of that. And we're in the Omniverse now. Should we be doing another crisis essentially 2 years later?
Yeah.
Or even less than that, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the answer for these things is always no. But you go back to Crisis on Infinite Earths and all these other crises. One of the biggest problems is they never wipe the slate fully clean. They can't do it because some of the books really sell well and they don't want to touch them. You see what they did with Superman. They completely retconned Superman with Crisis on Infinite Earths, got rid of Superboy ever existing, and kneecapped a book that was selling much better, The Legion of Superheroes. It was their number 1, number 2 seller at the time. So they kneecapped one of their highest selling books to try to raise another book up, while at the same time they didn't reset Batman. Batman they didn't go back to number 1. Batman's still going at 402, 403, all that stuff. And they couldn't reset Batman, so they didn't, because Dick Grayson was too popular as Nightwing. And so you had this whole weird thing where it's this isn't reset because we don't want to get rid of Nightwing, and then let's redo Jason Todd while we have it's a mess. Whenever they do these things, it's a mess. No matter what they say, you either don't wipe the slate clean or you completely wipe the slate clean. And every crisis they do there's always something on that slate where they're like, oh, no, don't touch that. And it's always an issue. But they always do it. Like Batman and Green Lantern into the New 52. Everything else got like, again, like wipe the slate clean with Wonder Woman and Swamp Thing and everything. And then it was like, oh, no, Batman, don't touch Batman. you know,
if
then we
don't fix it. Well, why are we fixing everything else around it then? They're kind of intrinsically connected.
Yeah, so you'd have that. You'd have what was it? You know, you had that Batman Incorporated bit in the New 52, which had some stuff that was technically not in continuity, but it happened anyway. And you know, again, whenever they do these things, they always leave things open, and it's just it causes problems that they always have to go back and fix.
That's kind of like why I like the DC Rebirth event.
Sure.
Basically, Jeff Johns went through and he said, we're going to take the best versions, the most beloved versions of all the characters, and that's going to be the archetype of the characters moving forward. And it's a reboot of the line, and we're the things that happened in the past happened, but these are the versions of the characters that you're getting. And even then it was confusing. Like they had to go and kill off the current Superman and like bring in a Superman from another multiverse because they had kind of messed up that Superman in New 52 so badly that they had to do something with it.
Yeah, it's I don't get it. I mean, they keep doing these things. They keep going back. They keep doing and it all derails good storytelling. You know, when you
Right now we're in Infinite Frontier.
Mm-hmm.
This new reboot of the DC universe where everything happened. We're operating in the Omniverse. This week in Green Lantern, Jeffrey Thorne started providing some structure to the Omniverse and kind of explaining, maybe not exactly how it works, but how some of the pieces fit together. And we're starting to learn about this. Well, there's a crisis right around the corner. Why even invest in this stuff if it's just going to get wiped out, in less than 18, 19 months anyway?
Yeah, and this is interesting stuff. Well, this is the problem when you float rumors like this is you're taking away from consumer confidence. It's like if you're already planning to retcon what's going on now when it's all the things are on anywhere from issues like 3 to 1 or not even started yet, it comes off weird. So yeah, that's why I'm not entirely sure this rumor is going to pan out exactly that way. It may end up being more of like a metal event where it kind of affects what's going on, but you can kind of keep reading what you're reading, and it doesn't really affect those books. I'm hopeful it's something like that because you just at this point, I think a lot of people just want a nice beefy run on something. They want to be left alone, just like let me enjoy like Green Lantern for a few years and build up to something.
Yeah, look at Robert Venditti's 50 issue run on Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps. That feels like an extremely long run in today's standards. And that was 2 years because they were coming out twice monthly.
Yeah.
Grant Morrison follows it up with 2 seasons. I think there were 12 issues each,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're rebooting it again. And Jeffrey Thorne's he's moving it somewhere. Let's let him get there. He's doing some exciting stuff. Not everyone's going to love it, but he's kind of connecting a lot of. There's a lot of connective tissue to the history of the DC, multiverses, as well as, like I said, the Omniverse.
Yeah.
But why would you even want to stunt the forward progression of what he's doing? Yeah,
I don't get it, but that might not be happening, or like in previous crises, if they do a crisis, that might be an area where they're like, no, we're not going to touch that. We're gonna focus here and there and reset these characters and this and that. So yeah, I think there's a chance it's going to be either more like that or more like an ancillary crisis that's not really going to be affecting everything. I think there's an audience and people who would be interested in in something like that, or like just like a multiverse hopping kind of thing, like if like Infinite Frontier or like a Legends of Tomorrow kind of thing was going on. I think there's interest in that of people being like, oh, let's have like a side thing where like characters from different timelines are working together to stop another thing. I think that's something that could be interesting and done to the side where it's not affecting the other books.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that they do more of those Tales from the Dark Multiverse, where they're kind of taking some classic stories and kind of going further with them, or maybe the outcome doesn't end up so hopeful and bad things happen. I really enjoy what if stuff like that.
Yeah,
but I don't really like that stuff in my main continuity. Like,
yeah, it's striking that balance. Like you could do like a what if, ongoing kind of thing, and I think you'd have people interested in that, even if it's one shot graphic novel kind of things, or a series of short miniseries of these kind of Elseworlds situations. Like some of them are really, really interesting. I really loved what was it? Ted McKeever did Superman Metropolis in the 90s. Just a one-shot graphic novel where it was the Superman characters, but as if they were in the 1927 silent film Metropolis. And it's outstanding. I love it. Stuff like that it's fun. There should be a lot of that, but it's that balance between doing something fun that's off to the side and letting people enjoy their ongoing soap operas, while they can also dip out and check out those other things.
One of the interesting things that we see in this rumor, and the article's in the video description, is that one of the purposes of this crisis was to explain why DC Comics characters aren't aging like we would have expected. Stop. We've got that explained in the DC Generations Shattered Forge story, which kind of derailed that. It's like, why are you even explaining this? This is a fun story that it's you got all these cool characters together. Just tell a fun action story. And I do feel like they're getting caught up on a lot of these things. Like, we get the sliding timeline. We get that Bruce Wayne isn't ready to retire and that he's the Batman. And even if he does retire, he's gonna come back.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, this is one of those situations where, again, like a person I interviewed, Paul Kupperberg, who had a very similar take on this. It's like, I'm paraphrasing. This isn't what he said, but I'm basically like, if you're telling me you're reading a comic about a man in blue and red tights and a cape, and he's flying through space, doesn't need to breathe, he's an alien, he's just flies through the sun to recharge his powers, and the thing that's hard for you to wrap your head around is like, I get all this is happening, but shouldn't Perry White be a little older by now? That's not a thing. No one is thinking that. It's it's way too much overthinking.
Yeah, it's a problem that doesn't really need solving. But it has been solved in Generations Forged and Generations Shattered, so they won't need to do that. Now, we'll admit this, Joe. If they do a crisis in 2022, and I believe that it probably will happen, sure, I think people will come back and they'll buy it. They'll be interested. The crisis name or a crisis-like event always brings in people. They're always interested in it. The problem is when you're coming out of it, because you're just rehashing something people have already seen. You're not going to beat Crisis on Infinite Earths and some of these other things. You're probably not going to be able to do something more, mind-blowing than what was done in like Flashpoint.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, it's going to be hard to beat those things. The standard is really high. And then coming out of it, once you've solved the problems that you wanted to solve, you have all these other problems and people are still turned off.
Yeah. No, it's it's been done to diminishing returns, these crises. They've always been done flawed. You had to have other crisis events. shortly after Crisis on Infinite Earths to start fixing some of the other problems that were caused by Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's it's way too much overthinking in a way that just doesn't move things forward. And instead, it's like stop overthinking it and just have a good time. It's okay.
Last thing I'll talk about, we know that DC Comics is going through a large-scale transition.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the leadership is churned out. They brought in new people. But a lot of the veteran writers, the people that would have been in charge of a crisis-like event, Jeff Johns appears to have moved on. I imagine he's going to do some more work with DC Comics in the future, but he's got his own imprint going on, and he's also got some controversy regarding the Ray Fisher situation. Scott Snyder seems to be he's still working at DC. It feels like he's still in a creative role, but he's focusing a lot on his independent stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Peter J. Tomasi appears to I don't know if he's walked away from DC permanently. He's kind of moved off. Like, who would even be there right now to do a crisis event? What's the name that's going to headline the thing? Is it going to be John Ridley? Maybe James Tynion? He seems to have a lot of creator-owned stuff. But you need some marquee names to kind of push these things and help build the excitement, just besides the crisis name.
I mean, it could be James. I think James could do it. It could be a grouping of people. Marvel's done this before too. I'm sure DC has, but like if you like they've patched things up with Mark Waid. You could potentially have a situation where it's like we got Grant Morrison, Mark Waid, Scott Snyder, and James Tynion are gonna be the architects of the next crisis or something like that. That makes perfect sense. This could be the way they lure Donny Cates over. Maybe we'll get Cates coming soon, and he's certainly shown that he has star power over Marvel. And depending on how contracts align and when exclusives come up, you never know.
And there was that rumor that he was offered Batman, and he decided to stay exclusive to Marvel at the time.
Yeah, but that could change. Who else? Chip Zdarsky.
I love Chip Zdarsky. You do a great job. He doesn't, for some reason, I don't know why his stuff doesn't sell well. Although I imagine Batman Urban Legends is probably selling very well.
Yeah, but if you have like a group, like especially if it's like a grouping or it's like a few writers. I mean, if it was Grant, Mark, Zdarsky.
Well, Grant and Mark used to work together a lot, right?
Yeah. They did
that Superman pitch that everyone talks about.
Yeah, and they did 52 together with Greg Rucka, and I don't know why I'm blanking on the fourth person, but yes, they they've done a lot of there's a lot of ways they could do this or not do this. Like this might be again, this might not happen. This may be a story that's pure fantasy, like many comics, but yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how things go. And this is also a company with AT&T behind them, with Daniel Cherry. If some of these books are selling gangbusters, they're not going to touch them. Like if Daniel Cherry's there and he sees that Batman's consistently selling over 100,000 copies an issue, and the trades are doing good, he is not going to be like, well, let's mess with this. But if Wonder Woman's selling like 30,000 copies, he might be like, what other comics are like that? And can we do something that's going to shake up that core grouping? Like if Wonder Woman, Superman, Titans, and a few core books like that aren't, he's probably going to be more inclined to be like, we need something that's going to shake up all of these, because these need to get moving. We have movies, TV shows, these have to be moving more.
Me personally, it feels like now is not the right time for a crisis, but I'm not in charge of DC Comics. It very well may happen, and I'll be honest with you, Joe. Mm-hmm. Even though I'm not excited about a crisis, I will be here on Thinking Critical YouTube. I'll cover the news, and when
course.
it comes out, I'll eventually cover that too, because there are things that have subverted my expectations. I wasn't unexpected or excited about Heroes Reborn. I got news for you. I got a review coming out tonight. It's much better than I anticipated.
That I've heard that. I now have to read this because I've also been in that camp of I have no interest in this, which has happened a few times. That was me with Future State. I was like, oh, this seems skippable. I can just skip and come back. But there were multiple titles in Future State. Not the whole thing, but there were multiple titles that were really enjoyable.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So yeah, you never know.
We shall see. I do want to say thank you very much to Joe, and congratulations on Beckstar. I believe it debuted this week, and hopefully there's lots of sales, and there's a second printing and all that good stuff. And best of luck to you and Mad Cave Studios.
Great. Thank you so much.